Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Power Hour. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by two distinguished gentlemen, Mr. Mathias Dahms, President of Deutscher Sportwettenverband, I think I've said that correctly, DSWV, and past President of IMGL and gaming practice lawyer for Melchers and superman of German regulation, Dr. Joerg Hofmann. So both of you, welcome today.
Thank you, Rory.
Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
Good. Now, I think real significant development happened in Germany this week. Well, actually, probably two if you count the result on Tuesday. But let's focus on the latter. But a real significant development on the state treaty of gambling came into force yesterday following the transitional regime from October. Joerg, so can you give some sort of brief insight into that and sort of how that's gone about day two as we see it now?
Yeah, yesterday we could say bye-bye to the Interstate Treaty 2020 and welcome the future of German gaming law. Or should I say we are rather at the beginning of future gambling regulation. Well, the transition went kind of smooth. It's just overnight. But of course, there was a transitional regime which basically applied to the casino industry. As many of you will know, since of October last year, a new regime was implemented that offered sort of a factual toleration of casino operators who adjusted their offerings to certain guidelines provided by the regulators. This is supposed to end by the end of June, but of course, the circular resolution, which forms the basis, one of the bases for that regulation, went beyond 30th of June. So we can say the transitional regime is still protecting compliant operators, which now have to apply for a license with the new gambling body, the regulatory body in Saxony-Anhalt. I suppose that this authority who took over responsibility yesterday will shortly provide some announcements. I wouldn't be surprised if they tell the industry, we expect a letter of interest to be submitted soon, telling us you were really interested to apply for a license, and then you can submit your license even now to this authority, and it will take a couple of months or weeks, and we will have first license casino type operators, which concern so-called virtual slot machines and online poker. And of course, there's still a licensing regime, a new one for sports betting. I will touch on this later. So the newly regulated industry for the private market in particular concerns sports betting operations, virtual slots and online casino. And there's a new tax regime in place, which we will also mention later.
Cool. And Mathias, how have your, from an association point of view, how have your members sort of reacted to this? I mean, this is a significant step that's been taken. Do you feel there needs to be more? Still needs more to be done, or to play catch up to Europe, certainly like the rest of the other regulations that are out there? What's your sort of viewpoint on that?
Me and all the members of our association, I think the whole industry is quite happy that we have done now this significant step into the future. As you may know, the regulation on gambling in Germany has really been a mess for the last 20 plus years, and we not only as an association but a lot of our members have strongly fought about this big step into the future. I think for the first time, all areas of gambling are now regulated in Germany. And we have to see how the authorities are going to deal with the whole thing. And the cooperation between the industry and the authorities is still something which has to be improved, to be honest. And if we have a look at the regulation in the past, the German lenders tried to keep their state monopolies as strong as possible, especially to keep the revenues on the lotteries, which have a significant impact to their budgets in the different lenders. And therefore, it has always been a strong fight between the private-owned operators and the state operators to develop this market. The state-owned operators were obviously very reluctant to do this and trying to keep as much as possible their hands on the whole market. Since the first state treaty we've got in, I think it was in 2008, there have been significant steps forward towards more European-like regulation and more European adaptable framework for the whole industry. And I think this new state treaty we have entered into yesterday, and this is a really big step, because now for almost all the areas of gambling, private operators are able to gain licenses or concessions, and but there's still a lot of potential for improvement. And although we have this new regulation, a lot of issues are still unclear how to handle them, and also the allowances themselves, for example, for virtual slots, where we are going to go into the applications now. There are a lot of question marks, and there we need to have a lot of discussion and consultation together with the authority. And the authority itself, as Joerg already has mentioned, is not really in place. They have a few handful of people who are going to run this application process now, and the authority will take over the full responsibility for the regulation of the market and the handling of the market, not before the 1st of January 2023. So there's a lot of time in between, and a lot of talks we have to do, and also a lot of potential we have to see.
Yeah, I mean, this has obviously been going on for a while. I think both you two, we all worked together about 10 years ago in an event that I was involved in. So, you know, it's gone back quite a long time. It's been taking quite a while to get here. Do you think has anything been learned from those 10 years? From, you know, will we be in a better place? And, you know, in your view, Joerg, do you think we've learned a lot from it?
I think so. We learned a lot, but we didn't learn enough, of course. But if you imagine, you said we were working together more than 10 years. When we put together first conferences, this was maybe in 2010 or whenever.
Yeah.
Since then, there was at least experience that could be made in Schleswig-Holstein. The first time that regulators learn about the industry, how are they really doing the business, and can we rely on what they tell us? I think this is very important. The same happened to Darmstadt, the regional council, starting with sports betting applications. The regulators always come from a past where they enforced against illegal operators, and the big picture of this industry was more like, these are pirates of the Caribbean, but not rather reliable big companies and stock-listed operators. And we all have the same goals, which is protecting players, being legally safe. Those who apply for licenses are the good ones in the market. And I think these two regulators in Darmstadt and in Schleswig-Holstein, they learn step by step to distinguish between these two categories of operators in the market. That's a chance, and we will offer all support, of course, to the new regulator in Saxony-Anhalt to make the same experience. I concur with Matthias. It's so important that now it's the first time ever in Germany we have legal certainty. When you get a license, you can operate, do your business, you can advertise your product, and you can shape the future of regulation together with the regulators. Absolutely, I agree with Matthias. There is a lot of improvement which we need to do, but I think this needs time. We have to make experiences, we need to access it. And now we start with online casino type regulation, as I would call it. We start to continue with sports betting. Sports betting operators are there. New licenses were issued. Probably new licenses are going to be issued. The regime of application continues. We are looking into the future, and we're trying to do our best to keep this a strong market in the future.
Yeah, And how are those? Because you mentioned those number of licenses. There being the Schleswig-Holstein license, the casino license. How are they all coming together? Are they?
Yes, but that's a very interesting question, because it's a new chapter in history. So the old chapter expired by the end of June. The Schleswig-Holstein license, which was a transitional sort of licensing regime, literally these licenses expired by 30th of June. The same with sports betting license being granted to operators before 1st of July, and even the transitional regime was limited theoretically to the 13th of June. But there are transitional regulations. The new interstate treaty automatically stipulates that those granted sports betting licenses will continue automatically until the end of 2020. And then operators need to apply in an easier process, of course, for a new extended license as of 1st of January 23, which, by the way, is the date when the centralized regulatory body in Saxony-Anhalt takes over competence for all the verticals. Then Darmstadt will close down its responsibility for handling sports betting, and it will move to Saxony-Anhalt. As I said before, the transitional regime will continue. I don't think endlessly. It is said that until the new regulatory body takes over, my understanding is until licenses are available, and then you need to apply for a license. Once you get a license, of course, there is no longer a transitional regime, which you do not need because you're in a better legal position. And Schleswig-Holstein, the law says, well, until the end of 2024, theoretically, they could be valid. But the license itself says they will be replaced automatically once you get a license in Saxony-Anhalt, which applies nationwide for the whole of Germany. So in that minute, it's over with Schleswig-Holstein. And I don't see this happening in 2023 or 2024, because I think two arguments are the balance, are the basis for protection under the transitional regime. First is compliance with rules. Second is willingness of applying for a license for virtual slots. And I think you will have to do this as an operator quite soon. And then it's a couple of months and you get your license. And those who will not apply within a certain time frame provided by the regulator shortly will be out of the game then later at a later stage. So I don't think we're talking about Schleswig-Holstein licenses in the course of next year very often. Might be an exception.
Cool. Mathias, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just although we have a lot of open questions now, what I already said, getting into talks is very important now. Those open questions, for example, relate to the current licenses of the sports betting operators. We expected that we would, for example, get an update of our current licenses, which contains the new regulations which came into force on the 1st of July following the state treaty. But unfortunately, we only, as a license holder, got a letter from the authority which stated that the licenses are prolonged by law until the 31st of 22, and that we have also to adopt all the new regulations from the state treaty in our systems, and that we have to connect, for example, to the databases, these strange central databases, which we may talk about them later, and that we have to follow all the new rules. But they didn't give us any interpretation of those rules, and the operators now who have to implement all these things are really struggling on that, because they don't really know how to handle all those things, and because there's no support, no given interpretation from the authorities. And it's really too hard to get.
Is that coming down the line though? Is that in place to be able to maybe be talked about at some point, just out of interest?
Yeah, and in fact, the new rules are in force since the 1st of July, and every operator has to implement those issues. There's a lot of new things in the state treaty, but nobody knows until when, if we have a transitional period there, or if they have to be operational since yesterday already, and what's about the new regulatory means, like the databases, where, for example, a new database for limits, where we have which is a central database, which is run by the authority in Saxony-Anhalt. And there, all the player limits, the cross-provider and cross-gambling area limits for deposits are set. And each operator who has already a license has to connect to this database and has to report all the deposits to this database. And maybe someday the customer is blocked then not to do any further deposits because the limit has been reached. And additionally, we have an activity database, which should prevent that a customer is not active on two platforms in parallel. And so the operators have to log on the customer to activate the customer via the database, and have to deactivate the customer on the database when he has left your platform. Nobody really knows if this will function, if the databases will be strong enough, the platforms will be strong enough to handle all the traffic, because we expect that there will be huge traffic, not only from the sports betting operators, but later on also from the slots operators and also the online casino operators.
I think, Matthias, that's a very good example that there's a lot of uncertainty and a high demand on clarification, which can only be provided by the regulators. And the operators need to understand, different to other jurisdictions, we don't have one central regulator in Germany at the moment. For sports betting, it's still Darmstadt. And for the new virtual slot machines, it is Saxony-Anhalt as of yesterday. And these technical challenges need to be synchronized. That's a challenge because, as you said, we have these two server systems. There's Argus in Darmstadt, Logos in Saxony-Anhalt. We have to find a way how to deal with this matter, and this needs some communication with the regulator. There were some concerns during June when this letter of the authority in Darmstadt came up and say the new interstate treaty will apply as of day one, which of course is a matter of fact, it's a law, it applies on day one. But I think they understand that the industry will not be ready to implement these technical challenges on 1st of July. The deposit limit is a very good example. The law says as of day one, you have to implement that standard deposit limit per player per month in the amount of €1,000 for sports betting as well. It also already applied for casino games, but then the regulator clarified they will come up with another information, a letter, approach the license holders and ask for a binding time frame, sort of a timetable which the operators can submit to the regulator and tell them how much time they need to technically implement the deposit limit and other technical items. So I think it works in a very proper manner. We would have preferred, of course, to get this information earlier. But I think one of the downsides of our regulation of the interstate treaty is, which concerns to the current one and to the predecessing, is there are missing transitional regimes which you can really call transitional regimes. It's just set in stone and then you have to apply it. The good news is the authority learned a lot and they are really advanced and we can start these discussions. Of course, the industry must be warned. There's no way to buy time. If you need 1 month, you should tell them it is 1 month. If it's 2 months, fine. But telling them we need 8 months would, of course, be unacceptable.
Yeah, no, out of interest, these obviously got the licenses that were there before. What about the sort of applications that are still pending? Is there anything to be talked about there? Is that in limbo? Is it in no man's land, so to speak, at the moment? What's going on with that, I suppose?
Yeah, surprisingly, there are still a couple of applications, sports betting applications, still pending under the old regime, since the gambling committee in their last meeting couldn't make a final decision, meaning not to grant those licenses and also not to reject it, because there were still some open points. Those need to be clarified. To my knowledge, the next meeting of the gambling committee will take place on 14th of July, and those operators who are concerned, they know what open points need to be fixed and discussed. I think it's minor details, probably some miscommunication, probably some things that simply need to be fixed, because we can say that those applications who are concerned by that situations are applications where the regional council said we submitted to the gambling committee with the suggestion to grant a license. So perfectly fine, with maybe some minor things that really need to clear up. I hope that the gambling committee will review these amendments and adjustments, because it would be a really bad situation for all involved parties on every side if they could not conclude in a final decision in advance of the operators. And if they made a decision to reject licenses, these decisions were already submitted to operators. For those who decided who realized time will not allow to complete the application until 13th of June, the option was to to withdraw the operation and continue with an amended application under the new regime, which means there are some amendments, and then continue the application, hopefully getting a license then. So it's still, we have those where the proceedings were ended, and those where proceedings were pending, and those where proceedings theoretically start again, but will only continue. I think this is because the gambling committee would not love to see these pending applications which are not completed simply to transfer into the new regime. A few things are on top of what we knew from minimum requirements under the old regime. There will be some amendments applicable for the social concept, the responsibility concept. A new business concept is required, which is a small format concept. An advertising concept, since no longer the district government in Düsseldorf is responsible for advertising permits. This is all feasible, and if someone is interested to learn about the new requirements, the Regional Council of Darmstadt published the amended requirements yesterday on their website. You can look it up and find more information. It's in German only, but it provides the full information.
Cool. And Mathias, is this an opportunity or more of a challenge for the industry in your view? Is this the start of something good, or are we going to be? I think we did a poll earlier. I don't know where we're at with the poll yet, but I think is it going to be another 6 months, 12 months before we get anywhere? I don't know. What's your view on that?
So it's of course it's both. It's an opportunity and it's a challenge. At the same time, for the operator, of course, it's an opportunity because the German market is quite an interesting market. It's the biggest market in Central Europe, and although it has been handled in quite a bad way during the last 20 years for the gambling industry, what I told you before, it's nevertheless an opportunity because private operators now have the basis to enter into this market. And on the challenge side, we have all these restrictions and the strange things the German regulators have invented here. Like the databases I've just mentioned, they have invented restrictions also on advertising. For example, for slots, you're not allowed to advertise between 6 and 21 in the evening, and this applies on both the internet and also the television. And it's quite a hard thing to see that internet advertising has been switched off there for 15 hours during the daytime, and nobody knows how this should be handled. For example, with social media posts, if you use these channels for your marketing purposes, and so there are a lot of new ideas which have never been checked out in other parts of Europe or even the world. And so the German regulators have been quite creative there in this compromise between all the 16 lenders. We've seen being talking about over years, but nevertheless, we as an association have the feeling that we have a basis now, and we have to work together with the authorities to come to good conclusions and to good solutions there. And we're happy that we have this central authority now, that it will take over responsibility more and more during the next 1.5 years. And finally, that we have an overall regulated market here, and there's always potential for improvement. That's clear. All the other regulated markets have not started from the scratch with a feasible regulation, but we think that this will happen here in Germany over the next few years, and that it will be a quite interesting market for every international operator.
Great. That literally, my alarm's just gone off, so that's actually perfect timing to probably wrap this up. Listen, thank you so much for both of you for joining me today. I wish you all the best, and look, let's hope it's not another 10 years, because I'll be very grey by that point, and let's hope it's not another 10 years before we see any further development. So wish you all the best and good luck, and thank you for joining me.
Likewise, thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great being here. Thank you.